Most true crime stories start with a body. This one starts with a scent. When deputies arrived at the Howard estate in the freezing midnight hours of February 2nd, they didn't find the copper tang of blood or the frantic, disheveled chaos of a grieving husband. Instead, they found a man who smelled like a fresh shower, a man with crisp, white, deodorant lines still visible on his clean t-shirt, while his wife, Kendy, lay in a bathtub upstairs with a bullet in her head. Dan Howard, a 20-year veteran of the Idaho State Police, had apparently paused to groom himself. Every other documentary will tell you this was a tragic suicide that turned into a murder investigation. They are wrong. This wasn't a murder. It was a performance. Today, we aren't just looking at the evidence. The Intuition are looking at the professional's mirror. The terrifying story of a SWAT veteran who used his own police training to arrest his wife's life, and then used the science of death to try and outsmart the very system he helped build. You've heard the name Kendy Howard, but you haven't seen the staging. And you certainly haven't seen the one bloodless mistake that proved the man in the uniform was actually the shadow in the room.
This is Case Note Studio. We document real criminal justice cases, examining the evidence, the decisions, and how the system reached its outcome.
Like and subscribe.
There's a specific kind of silence that exists in the Idaho Panhandle in the dead of winter. It is a heavy, suffocating quiet that swallows the sound of the wind and the crunch of the snow. But on the night of February 2nd, 2021, the silence at the Howard estate wasn't natural. It was manufactured. At 11:58 p.m., a man named Dan Howard picked up the phone. He didn't just call for help. He began a performance. 911, my wife. She shot herself. She's in the tub.
I need you to make sure I got it. Okay? 3, 2, 6, 7. Okay. All right. Keep really big breath for me. Take your nose and out to your mouth. Okay? All right. Come on, Dan. I can't understand you. Okay?
When the Kootenai County deputies arrived, they expected to find a house in the throes of raw, jagged grief. They expected the smell of metallic blood and the frantic, disorganized energy of a man who had just lost his partner of 26 years. Instead, they met a man who felt like a statue. Dan Howard was a veteran, a Marine, a 20-year veteran of the Idaho State Police. He was a man who had stood on the other side of the yellow tape 1,000 times. He knew what grief was supposed to look like. He knew the script. But there was a glitch in his staging. I want you to look at the first responding officer's notes. It's a detail that seems small, almost trivial, until you realize what it implies. Deputy Miranda Thomas looked at Dan Howard. He was clean. He was dry. And on his t-shirt, there were fresh, white lines of deodorant. Think about the timeline. Your wife has allegedly just pulled a trigger. You are the only other person in the house. In the minutes before the sirens arrived, while Kendy lay in a tub of cooling water, Dan Howard apparently took a shower and groomed himself. Tell me in the comments, is this the behavior of a man in shock, or the muscle memory of a professional who needed to wash the evidence off his skin? I'm reading your theories because this detail is the key to everything that follows. Part 2, the vibrancy. He tried to extinguish Kendy Howard was the polar opposite of the shadow her husband cast. She was 48 years old, and she was vibrant. That is the word every friend, every neighbor, every family member uses. She was the girl who raised sheep in 4-H, the woman who worked double shifts at a diner with a smile that never wavered, and the mother who turned a 10-acre plot of land into a sanctuary. She loved life. She loved the spin classes that made her feel strong. She loved the glass chickens she collected. Fragile, beautiful, things that caught the light. But for 26 years, Kendy Howard lived in a house where the light was constantly being measured and managed. Dan Howard didn't just love Kendy, he governed her. He managed the $2 million they had built together, not like a partner, but like a warden. Her money was their money, but his money was his own. In 2021, the dynamic changed. Dan began working in the Alaska oil fields, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. For Kendy, those 3 weeks of silence weren't lonely. They were a revelation. In the silence of Dan's absence, Kendy found herself again. She lost weight. She started planning cosmetic surgery. She hired a divorce lawyer. She was 3 days away from moving into a new house. She was 3 days away from freedom. Stay with me, because we are about to look at the 911 call from the future. 4 nights before she died, Kendy Howard predicted her own murder to a police officer. If you think this was a sudden snap, wait until you hear about the black latex gloves. Part 3, the architecture of the bathroom. Let's go upstairs. Let's look at the staging. Detective Jerry Northrup is a man who speaks the language of crime scenes. He knows that blood tells a story that human beings are too afraid to voice. He walked into the bathroom and saw Kendy in the tub. The water was full. Her pistol sat at the bottom, but the water was pink. In a true suicide, a gunshot to the head, the heart pumps with a final desperate surge of adrenaline. It pushes blood into the water until the tub is a dark, opaque, midnight crimson. You shouldn't be able to see the bottom of the tub, but Northrup could see the gun. The water was thin. It was washed. Then, there was the bedroom, broken glass on the floor, scattered clothes, and wet towels jammed behind the bathroom door. It looked like a struggle that someone had tried to neatly end. And then, the sound. Thump, thump, thump. It was coming from the laundry room. A dryer was running, a load of towels spinning in the heat. Investigators found that the dryer was started exactly 60 seconds after the 911 call ended. While the dispatcher was still processing the tragedy, Dan Howard was starting the laundry. Was he drying the towels he used to scrub the master bedroom floor? Type cleanup or innocent in the comments. Let's see where the jury of the internet stands. Part 4, the dress rehearsal in the dark. To understand February 2nd, we have to talk about the pillow incident. 4 nights before her death, Kendy's mother called for a welfare check. When the deputies arrived, Kendy was a ghost of herself. She told them that at 2 a.m., she had been jolted awake by a sensation of being watched. She opened her eyes to see Dan standing over her. He wasn't in his pajamas. He wasn't in a bathrobe. He was dressed in all black tactical gear. He was wearing black latex gloves. And in his hands, he was holding a pillow, inches from her face. He didn't say a word. He didn't move. He just stared at her through the darkness. It was a death dress rehearsal. The deputies couldn't arrest him. In the eyes of the law, standing in your own bedroom with gloves and a pillow isn't a crime. Kendy told her friends the next day, "He's a cop. He's too smart to do it now. He knows the police are watching." She made the mistake so many victims make, and she believed his professionalism would protect her. She didn't realize that his professionalism was the very thing that would allow him to kill her and think he could get away with it. Why do we trust the professional mask more than our own survival instincts? Kendy saw the gloves. She saw the pillow. Why did she go back into that house? Let's talk about the psychological sunk cost fallacy in the comments. Part 5, the silent killer. The original medical examiner made a mistake. They saw a gunshot and a gun, and they checked the box for suicide. But they weren't looking for the specialist's touch. Dr. Jennifer Nera was. She performed a second deep dive forensic analysis. She didn't look at the wound. She looked at the lack of life. First, the tongue. The bullet passed through Kendy's tongue. If her heart were beating, that tongue would have exploded with blood. The tissue would have been saturated. It wasn't. Second, the jaw. Kendy's jaw was shattered, not by a bullet, but by blunt force trauma. Third, the angle. The bullet traveled down into her neck. The theory that finally broke the case was chillingly simple. Dan Howard didn't shoot Kendy to kill her. He killed her with his bare hands. He used the carotid restraint. It's a move he had taught for 20 years. You apply pressure to the sides of the neck, bypassing the windpipe and collapsing the arteries to the brain. It is silent. It is quick. And if held for 3 minutes, it is lethal. Dan Howard arrested his wife's life. He choked her until she was dead. Then, he carried her cold, limp body to the bathtub. He placed her in the water. He put the gun in her mouth, and he pulled the trigger. No, a dead body doesn't bleed. That's why the water was pink. That's why the tongue was dry. He was trying to retrofit a suicide onto a murder. He was using his badge to stage a play where he was the grieving victim. This is the moment the professional's mirror shattered. He thought he was the only one who knew the physics of death. He forgot that science doesn't respect the badge. Part 6. The runner at Spokane International. The trial in 2024 was a battle of shadows. Dan Howard sat there, clean-shaven, looking every bit the retired trooper. His lawyers tried to assassinate Kendy's character. They called her depressed. They said she was unstable because she wanted a divorce. But Dan knew. He saw the evidence mounting. He saw the pink water theory taking hold of the jury. During a weekend recess, Dan Howard made his final move. He wasn't a professional anymore. He was a fugitive. He cut off his ankle monitor. He got into his car, and he fled toward the Spokane International Airport. He was a man who spent 20 years catching runners, and now he was one. He was caught at the terminal. He told the officers, his former peers, that he was just helping a friend. The jury never heard about the escape. The judge ruled it too, damaging to his right to a fair trial. But the jury didn't need to know he ran. They had the dryer. They had the deodorant. They had the pink water. Guilty of second-degree murder. Part 7. The fragility of glass chickens. At his sentencing, Dan Howard did something truly grotesque. He stood before the judge and spoke of his love for Kendy. Now, he said they had a good marriage. He said he was not that monster. But the judge looked at him and saw exactly what he was. He saw a man who had used his specialized knowledge to murder the woman who slept beside him. He saw a man who used a police-sanctioned chokehold to snuff out a grandmother's life. Life in prison. No chance of parole. Today, Kendy's 12-year-old granddaughter, Kendy, treasures the collection of glass chickens that Kendy left behind. They are small, colorful, and incredibly fragile. They are a metaphor for Kendy herself. She was a woman of light and color who was crushed by a man of stone and shadow. This isn't just a story about a bad cop. It's a story about the danger of the uniformed shadow. It's a story about why we must listen when women say they are afraid. Kendy Howard told the police he was going to kill her, and he did. Kendy was 3 days away from her new life. If you or someone you know is living in a home where they feel watched, or where a professional mask hides a violent heart, please use the resources in the description. What detail of this staging was the most chilling to you? Was it the laundry running at midnight, or the deodorant lines on his shirt? Let's keep Kendy's memory alive in the comments. Thank you for walking through this shadow with me. Rest in peace, Kendy.